A well-shaded drawing gives a form depth and realism. It can make all the difference in taking a piece from looking flat and two-dimensional to giving it three-dimensionality. There are different methods, techniques, and approaches that you can use to shade your drawings to give it a realistic feel. So in this video, I'm going to give you tips so you can instantly level up the shading in your drawings to make it look smooth, consistent, with accurate placement of light and shadows and realistic levels of contrast. My first tip is to get some soft pencils that will enable you to sketch ultra dark tones. Pencils have different softness ratings that range from around 5H to 12B. H stands for hard. H pencils mean there is a higher quantity of binder relative to graphite, making the pencils harder in texture and meaning that less graphite will impart onto the paper's surface. The higher the H rating, the more binder there will be in the mix. H pencils are great for technical drawings, but not so great for shading. Then B is a pencil grading that stands for black, so the higher the B rating, the lower the binder to graphite ratio in the pencil core. This makes marks appear darker and the pencils will be softer to use. I recommend getting some softer pencils with ratings of around 6B or 8B if you want to shade with darker marks. This will be useful for creating contrast in your drawing. I use the Faber-Castell Pitt Graphite Matte Pencils. I find these great for shading because, unlike regular graphite pencils, they have a matte surface quality instead of having a slight sheen under bright light. This really emphasises darker shadows in drawings. Other than just pencils, I recommend getting some smooth, thick paper like Bristol board. Thicker paper means that you can build up layers of graphite, creating more contrast in your shading and erase details without damaging the paper's surface. For blending, I use a tortillon. These are made of tightly wound paper. They pick up and then smudge graphite across the paper. Use it to blend values together to soften edges and create smooth gradients. Tortillons absorb the graphite, so you can use them as a drawing tool once they're saturated to create areas with blurred lines or soft shadow. To clean them, use some sanding paper to sharpen the point and remove the graphite. A kneaded eraser is also a valuable tool for shading and highlighting. Its pliable texture allows for precise erasing and gradual lightening of values. It can be shaped into a fine point for adding details, or flattened to lift broader areas. I use a knife for sharpening pencils as this enables me to draw with my paper propped up at an easel. It also helps if you want to hold the pencil with the overhand grip and shade with the pencil on its side, as using the overhand grip can give you a better range of movement when working on shading large areas. I've made a video about sharpening pencils with knives and I'll put a link in the description, so check it out. The other tool that I sometimes use, which is great for creating large smooth areas of shading, is graphite powder. When you sharpen pencils with a knife, you can collect and use the dust that's created from sanding the pencil lead. I use a soft brush to brush the graphite powder across the paper to fill in large dark areas. This works great for backgrounds or blocking in the base of skin or hair tones that you can build up to add layers later on. Types of shading techniques include tonal shading, hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, and scumbling. My tip is to experiment with different techniques and find one you love using, then practice it until you feel like you've achieved a level of control and comfort with the technique. The more you practice, the more the motions will become second nature. Tonal shading is a technique that involves gradually building up tone and creating smooth transitions between light and dark areas. It's achieved by using a range of values from light to dark, using the side of your pencil or blending tools to blend the tones together. This is the most common shading technique that can be used to create smooth texture. Hatching and cross-hatching are techniques that involve drawing parallel lines in the same direction or crossing lines over each other at an angle. The closer together the lines are, the darker the area will appear. You can also angle the lines to follow the contour of the form, which is called contour hatching, to emphasise the volume of your subject. Hatching is a great way to create a sense of variety and rhythm in your drawings through the use of texture. Then, to achieve smooth transitions between light and dark areas, blending is an essential shading technique. Use tools like tortillons, tissue, or soft brushes to create gradients between different values. By using a tortillon, you can pinpoint specific areas to blend to create soft edges. Experiment with different techniques and find one that suits your style. Hatching and stippling can feel a bit counterintuitive at first, especially as most artists will learn to draw by tonal shading, but these techniques can add a unique texture and depth to your work. When you come to shade drawings, spending time observing your reference is key. By seeing and understanding the value composition in a scene, you'll be able to accurately convey the relative values in a drawing with shading. Focus on the relationships between the darkest shadows, midtones, and highlights. You might be surprised at how close some of these values actually are, especially in areas that you might have assumed to have more contrast. Try to pick out and isolate specific values in the reference. I find that it helps to edit the reference image so that the colours are in grayscale. This makes it easier to perceive the relative values without the hue and saturation of the colours skewing the appearance. The more you draw, the more your eyes will become attuned to these value transitions. One tool that can help, that you can make yourself, is a value checker tool. I made this by replicating the Denman-Ross value scale on a piece of paper, which is essentially a value scale of numbers from 1 to 9, with 1 being white and 9 being black. Values 2 and 3 are light tones, then values 7 and 8 are dark, whilst 4, 5 and 6 are mid values. I then also created this cutout inside a square of paper which helps to isolate the values, so I can cross-reference it with the value scale. When I look at the values in a reference, the first thing I look for is what the darkest and lightest values are, so I know where the darkest shadows and lightest highlights will be in the drawing. I usually label the darkest and lightest values with a number from the Denman-Ross value scale. Then I know that all the midtones will fall between these two numbers. Another key component to shading is paying attention to edges. Edges in a drawing are the transition between one element or value to the next. Edges can be hard, soft, or lost. Hard edges are where two elements or values in a drawing are sharply defined, with no blending or softening between them. In contrast, when two elements in a drawing blend smoothly into each other, this is known as a soft edge. Lost edges are where the transition from one element to another appears seamless. It's common to see lost and soft edges in shadow tones in portraits, or in the distance in landscape painting. Lost and soft edges can be used to show sections of a drawing that are out of focus, the quality of light in an image, or to show atmospheric perspective in a landscape drawing. There is a step-by-step shading process that will help you to map out the shadow and light tones, then gradually build up layers of shading to create a realistic value range. The first step is to create a contour drawing of your reference. In my drawing course, I teach artists how to sketch contour drawings with accuracy. Try to replicate the outlines, shapes, and proportions of your reference drawing. Next, identify the light source in your reference image. This will help you to determine where the shadows should be placed. Then map out where the shadow tones will be by outlining the shadow shapes. Before you commit to shading the darker areas, map out their exact placement. When you're confident of the placement of shadows, shade them lightly with an even tone. Increase the contrast gradually in the darkest areas, then begin to shade the midtones. You'll see midtones on the planes that are not directly reflecting light from the light source, but are also not being blocked by another object or subject. Go back to the darkest areas of the drawing and further increase the contrast. It will be a process of gradually building up layers in the drawing and increasing contrast as you go. Try to create a unified appearance across the whole drawing, so work on incrementally increasing the contrast across the whole piece, instead of focusing on completing just one section at a time. Once you've established the values, focus on the transitions between these values. Decide whether the edges are hard, soft, or lost. Use a tortillon to blend the softest edges and make sure to shade transitional values. Shade the darkest areas with more pressure to create the darkest values in the drawing. Then finally use a kneaded eraser to lift the brightest highlights from the lighter midtones. You can refine some of the details at the end with a sharp pencil. These finishing touches can create focus in a drawing and help to create a polished look. I hope you found these shading tips helpful. If you did, please let me know by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I'm giving away 2 free ebooks for people who sign up to my email list. The ebooks are filled with tips and techniques to improve your sketching. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.